Thank you guys for coming out tonight, seriously, and I want to thank Randall while he's standing right next to me or sitting next to me. Randall has been a huge supporter of the Gasparilla Film Festival for years. We would not have closing night tonight if it was not for him. Thank you so much, Randall. And thank you all for coming out. It's been a hell of a year, pandemic and everything in between. Thank you for choosing to come out tonight, not only to support GIF, but for event venues and theaters in general. We appreciate you. Butts and seats here. Support your local theaters. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
So here's how it's going to work. There's a lot of people on the stage, a lot of very talented people. I'm going to do one question apiece from myself. And then we're going to turn it over to the audience to ask some great questions. And then afterwards, we ask all of you to join us next door at the vault for our closing night party. But first, Randall, since you're sitting next to me, you have produced 116, 120 films, prolific producer. What made you decide to take the producer hat off and sit in the director's chair?
That's a long, therapeutic question. The honest answer is I was creatively dying as a producer. That's the truth. I felt like I had this goal, like to get nominated for an Oscar as a kid. That was my dream. And then when Irishman came along and I kind of achieved that goal, I just felt like the business was kind of consuming me, and I was losing myself as an artist. And I was kind of searching for about a year before I decided to do this to find something that could refuel me and bring me back to the artist that I started as a film school kid, as a theater kid. And I just was kind of frustrated, and I just said, maybe directing will do it. I'm not sure, but if it doesn't, then I'm gonna go retire for it and call it a day. So I found the script and I was petrified. And I felt like because I preached for so many years to young filmmakers that if you're uncomfortable, then you're doing something right. And I think I got really comfortable as a producer. And when I chose to direct, every step of the way, every phase of the process, I was uncomfortable. So I felt like maybe I was in the right place. And when I got to the set and got to pre-production, I really felt like I found my place again in the community. So that's what drove me to it.
So I said one question, I'm gonna ask two for Randall. What a year to pick to direct.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Uplifting.
What was 2021 and 2020 like? Your directorial debut, but you have everything in the world as an adversary to your final creation. What was that like?
I mean, it was, I felt like God was testing me to make sure I wanted to direct. Like, he's like, okay, let me straighten you out here. If you really want to direct, here's a worldwide pandemic. Here's a $2 million overage on your budget. We're just gonna screw you up every which way. And that's kind of what happened. And I just persevered, and I had such an incredible cast by my side. And I felt like, I've made a lot of movies with a lot of problems. And I think I was prepared for that. I didn't think I was prepared for a pandemic, but I was prepared for everything else. And I don't know, the passion was back for me, and the fire was back, and I just was never, there was no version of me quitting or giving up. I don't think a lot of filmmakers, a lot of producers would have thrown in the towel financially just as we were getting destroyed. Shut down, starting shut down, testing. We didn't even know, when we shut down and we came back, we didn't even know what protocols meant. We didn't even know what testing meant. It was crazy, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that we weren't prepared for. So there was a lot of things that I had to face as a producer and a director, but I just love the creative process so much now that, producing, my company will continue to do that and make great films, hopefully. But as a director, that's really where my heart is now.
So, Lucas Haas, prolific career. You have been in, come on, look. You have played so many different roles, but you haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to play the villain, necessarily. In fact, I was thinking today, what else have you played? Penn from Brick comes to mind. Amazing film, come on.
Good job.
Why this role? What interested you in joining the cast and playing a serial killer?
It's funny, actually. You know, my manager, first, he sent me the script. He didn't tell me anything about it. All he said was, read this script for me, because I need you to read it for me. Tell me what's the best role in the script. So I read it, and I was like, after I read it, I'm like, well, the serial killer is the best role. It's like, well, they're offering you the serial killer. I'm like, I guess I gotta take it. I mean, it's a great role. You know, there's so much to it. There's a lot of dynamics, and there's kind of his good side, and I mean, I guess it's not a good side, but from his perspective, you know. So it was just a really fun role to play in a lot of ways, a really difficult role to play in a lot of ways, and Randall gave me so much room to kind of explore it, and I'm very happy that I took the role.
So I totally have so many questions, so I'm gonna keep going. How do you, as an actor, vacillate? Because I think it's really well portrayed. Because there is that dichotomy, like you are a hardcore evil person, serial killer, but then you have that family life at the same time. And as an actor, you're vacillating between those two spaces. What was that like?
So for me, you know, the dark stuff is so hard to really like grasp. So the way I did it was just pretend like it didn't exist. You know, I just normalized it to myself. You know, because I think that's what a serial killer does. You know, so there's not much of a switch. He thinks that it's all just part of his life, and he's normalized it for himself. So that was kind of my angle, was just, that's why he can go from sort of being in the box with these girls, and then his daughter's there, it's like all just regular to him.
If you can pass that, yeah, we only have a couple.
You're saying it's regular, I think it's terrifying is what it is.
So, Caitlin, just before I ask you a question, who has seen Dwight in Shining Army? Anybody? All right, well, I certainly have. You were used to playing badass warrior princess. Fantastic series. What was it like finding that vulnerability to play the character you did in this film?
I think that, well, I was immediately drawn to this project just based off the sides that I got from my audition, and it was the heart of the kidnapped material is what I really got to play around with. And then after I flew to Puerto Rico for the first time filming, talking to Randall in his makeshift Puerto Rico office, he really opened up to me in one of our first conversations about how passionate he was about this story and giving a voice to these voiceless girls, and so many stories that we haven't heard about of real instances like this where girls have gone missing. And there's that great line that Megan says about if no one's looking for you, are you really missing? And that passion that he had for our story gave me so much motivation, just immensely, to really dive into those scenes with Lucas and develop that comfortableness off screen, that we could really tap into the grit and the intensity of those moments. And I felt like, I mean, unfortunately, there's so many instances that things like this have happened. I just really wanted to do those stories that we may not have heard about justice.
So you've acted well beyond your age, if I can say. Just fantastic. Where are you drawing your experiences from when you're finding your characters?
That's a really interesting question, and something growing up as a kid in the entertainment industry. Lucas and I actually shared a lot of these conversations. I haven't had experiences like this, and especially in something of a role like this, but really diving into the material and then getting to work alongside a fantastic ensemble of actors. We had an amazing cast and an amazing crew, and just working in the intensity of the global pandemic brought us so closely together to get to create these stories in our minds, and developing that chemistry with one another to explore and grow within these roles and to try things out. And I think with Randall's guidance and allowing us to explore the vulnerability of these scenes, like you said, it really helped fill those holes for me.
Kathleen, if we can pass the mic to you. I heard from both Randall and Tim, you had a pretty amazing audition. Why don't you talk us through what that audition process was like, and then receiving that phone call that you received the role?
Wow, I haven't thought about that in a while, because it was so, the audition was super intense. auditioned for initially to play Heather, which is her sister, who's like being trafficked. And then I was like, you know what? I also kind of want to do this one. So do you mind if I do that? I did it first with an accent. They didn't want the accent. And they're like, well, you're from Florida, right? And I was like, yeah, but I'm from Miami. Like, it's a different accent, you know? I don't have the same accent. So they're like, well, just talk like yourself. So I did it. And the guy who was, because I have to like drop to the floor, like he's choking me. And the guy who was like her assistant, the casting director's assistant, he dropped his stuff. I was like, oh my God. And then I got a call from Randall like a week later, and he was like, you are gonna make my life so freaking easy. You're in, you got it. So it was awesome. Yeah.
It's amazing. So after having that wonderful experience, does that embolden you to try out more things, to go to more auditions? I mean, it has to be a huge confidence booster.
Yeah, I've done a lot of independent films, and I've starred in a few, but this was like my first big studio film, and since then I've done a few more Lionsgate films, which has like been such a blessing. But this was the first time that I played something so edgy. Like she's technically an underage call girl, you know. So I really wanted to make her just super innocent, super pure, and it's really the turning point of the film, because that's when we see Lucas and who he really is. So it was awesome, and yeah, it's really inspired me to do more.
Fantastic. Alan, this was your first script, if I'm not mistaken. Well, or at least the first produced script.
Big difference between them.
Of course. But it has to feel pretty good to be sitting here in the audience and seeing it on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk us through just that, one, the genesis of the script, but then realizing it and seeing it on the screen for the first time.
Yeah, so 2004, the FBI started something called the Highway Serial Killer Initiative. They kept it secret for 5 years. The genesis for the FBI was that they started to discover that there was hundreds, if not thousands, of Jane Does turning up in close proximity to major highway systems in the United States, an epidemic. And they were put two and two together that long-haul truck drivers were a part of that problem. And Midnight in the Switchgrass basically was almost like an origin story of that initiative. There really was 7 cases that were pinned together by the joint kind of jurisdiction of a local cop, a state cop, a federal agent, and so it kind of was our origin story for a very real initiative that went on to bring a lot of justice to a lot of cold cases. Again, Megan's line of if no one's looking for you, you're not really missing was kind of a little bit of our rallying cry for that. And if you're not, standing in front of a white picket fence, holding a picture saying, "Has anybody seen my daughter?" Nobody was really looking. So that was kind of the genesis of the idea, and working with Tim and Randall and the whole team to kind of develop it into this version, something that could be enjoyed and easily consumed, but also kind of shine a light on the fact that nobody was really paying much attention to people that were disappearing from truck stops or other places that were quote unquote living a high-risk lifestyle. And we, Randall and I spent a lot of time talking about the fact that nobody really chooses to wake up one day and say, "I want to be a truck stop prostitute." And so they just kind of marginalized. And we had a lot of conversations in the middle of the night. You'll never imagine getting a phone call from your wonderful director saying, "All right, so what are we really thinking about this box in the middle of a barn right now?" And we spent 30 minutes having a very rational conversation, and at the end of it, it's like Randall's like, "You got a really sick and twisted mind," that hangs up. So a lot of those, and Randall can talk to me too. A lot of these conversations in the middle of the night
So as your first project that's made it to the screen, what was that like, just seeing it come to life?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to have these wonderful artists involved with it, and Randall has such a tremendous amount of experience that it wouldn't have happened if he didn't have so much experience, because we're March, we started filming, there was 100 cases of COVID in the United States, and 10 days later it shut down. Tried again in July. 2 weeks it gets shut down, and if it wasn't for Randall's immense experience in the industry, wonderful producing partners like him, it wouldn't have gotten started again. So tremendous, I loved it. This is the first time I've seen it on screen, so I'm still trying to formulate, an answer to your initial question. I'll get back to you on that.
So Tim, you have worked with Randall for many years, and Randall, I'll actually include you in this question as well. You've seen a lot of things, ups and downs of God knows how many productions, but you've never seen a pandemic before. That is just a new paradigm that no one in the film industry has ever had to deal with before. What was that like? Was it just sheer panic? I mean, you were a week and a half into shooting and it's like, nope, you're stopping. How do you pick the pieces back up?
Panic, terror, uncertainty. I mean, there's no way to describe it. I mean, here I am producing my mentor's first feature as a director, and it shuts down, and there's nothing that I can do. There's nothing that he can do. There's nothing that anybody can do to prevent this from happening. All I want to do is to propel his vision and his career forward. And it just ended. It just ended. And there was no future in sight. There's nothing that we could do. It was heartbreaking for everybody involved. That was,
this is the
God's
holy shit, Tim. I want to jump out the window right now.
But
It was done, but shit, we got out of it.
except that Randall Emmett was producing and directing this fucking movie, and it was going to fucking happen. So we went back to Puerto Rico, and it didn't fucking happen. And then Randall had this crazy idea of shooting it in Santa Ynez, and it fucking happened. And it's all him. It was all Randall. There's this famous quote from Avi Lerner, who he worked with for a long time. And it says something like, if you close the door, he'll come through the window. If you shut the window, he'll come through the chimney. And you know what? He came through the chimney, and we lit a fire, I think. I don't know. That's crazy.
So in producing, you get insurance, there's a thing called negative pickup, there's also a thing called a force majeure. And if there was ever, or act of God. And if there was ever an act of God, I think the insurance companies probably had a way to say like, yeah, pandemic, probably act of God. So you guys got absolutely screwed, if I can say that.
Yeah, the insurance
so
companies
many
did
levels.
not account for this.
So, and I'll ask Randall this too. Like, how do you go back to your investors and be like, yeah, pandemic, I need more money. We need more time. Like, how do you, no one's ever had this experience before at this level. Like, how do you approach that, Randall?
It's like flashback tragedy.
Trauma in real time.
I mean, look, we were now, nobody was ready for this. Nobody in the world was ready for this. No human in any business was ready for this. So when it happened, first we were in denial, all of us, because we're getting on a plane, and we're like, oh, the safe thing is to go home. We're going to go back to LA, we're going to hang out for a few weeks, then we're going to go back and film. We didn't know that the world would collapse completely. So the insurance companies, of course, they all bailed. I mean, there's no pandemic clause, so we're out left You know, I don't know. I mean, we just had to raise more money. It was horrible. I mean, it was horrible on every level. But the experience, I thought I knew everything. You know, 120 something movies, I thought I've seen it all, and this was a new one. So I think it made me a better producer. It made, I think, us as a group bonded at a level that I don't think we would have. I mean, I felt like we were shooting a TV series. I mean, we started and went home for a few months, then we came back, went home for a few months, came back. I was like, we're on season 8, we only shot like 8 days at that point. So, I mean, we knew the characters, like, you know, we could have done a prequel and a sequel, but it was really tough. I mean, I'm laughing today because we're on the backside of it now, but we weren't laughing. I wasn't laughing then. None of my partners were laughing. It was a really hard time. It was a hard time for the world because first you're concerned about health and your family and friends just being okay. Once you get through that part, then you start saying, how do we go back to work? And I started getting really angry that our business wasn't moving fast enough. And then I started threatening the unions. Not a good thing. Don't do it. I don't encourage this. They're more powerful than I am and trickier. But I just felt like I'm going to go to the press and I'm going to start telling them that we're ready to go back to work. So were a lot of other people. I mean, people who were crew, you know, PAs and grips and electrics. These people couldn't pay their bills, and they're calling me, somebody who's provided such a livelihood for so long, asking me when we go back to work, and I didn't have an answer. It's the first time in my life I couldn't do anything. I felt paralyzed. And so I went to the trades and I said, look, we're ready to go back to work. Why aren't there protocols in place? Like, there are people willing to put masks on, to put gloves on, to test, and go back to work and figure it out. And so I think about 30 or 45 days from that article, they put out a protocol booklet and we started going back to work. But yeah, it was brutal. And the first 6 months of the pandemic, going back to work was like going to outer space. I mean, I'm trying to direct Lucas or Caitlin, and they've got masks and shields. I can't even see them. I don't know if they're smiling or upset or pissed off at me. I don't know anything. So it was a very new world for us, trying to have a creative bond. Thank God we all knew each other. We had a lot of history. But as a director and to an actor, you feed off one another when you're really trying to get things out of each other. And it's scary. It was weird because you couldn't even see them until right before you roll cameras, because there were all these COVID officers, you know, whippersnapping us. Put your mask back on right now. And I was like, oh shit, sorry. You know, so it was a crazy time, but I'm glad that we were able to shoot movies during this pandemic.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. Emil, if we can pass the mic down, we got one. Okay.
Woo! Yeah!
You are acting across from the prototype of so many badass portrayals of a cop in Bruce Willis, John McClane, but your role in this film is very nuanced. There's that portrayal of the family life at home. Where did you create your character, and where did you dig, as far as your own experiences, to find that person that was actually on the screen?
Thank you for the question. You know, the script was fantastic. The character of Byron Crawford was very well delineated by Alan. And Randall and I talked a lot about how to make Byron kind of the flip side of Lucas's role. You know, he stands for everything good. And we talked about how, you know, Byron could use, you know, his faith and his religion is a source of his morality. So he's not just talking about doing the right thing on this kind of modern materialistic plane. There's a spiritual foundation for what him and also his wife stand for. You know, she's the other pillar to his personality. And I felt like that was, you know, that was very important so that his natural sense of goodness was buoyed by something greater than himself. It wasn't just like him being a nice guy. I mean, he just came from, he's just a good guy. You know, there was a real spiritual foundation to the role. And I think that was something that we explored a little bit, and Alan had kind of drawn it out nicely for us to kind of, to tap into, you know.